Hey guys, it's Casey, and today we're going to talk about the books I've read so far in August. So August has been an absolutely crazy good reading month for me so far. It is the 15th, so exactly halfway through the month when I'm filming this, and I have already read 9 books. And not all of them have been like super short either. Page count wise, I have read more this month than I have any other single month for the last like 4 or 5 months. So this is definitely on track to be my best reading month ever by a long shot. But assuming I keep up the pace that I've been going at, I didn't want to wait to wrap up all of these books until the very end of August, because if I did that, I think my wrap-up video would have been a feature-length film. So far of the 9 books I've read, 2 of them have been 5 stars, 4 of them have been 4 stars, 2 of them have been 3 stars, and 1 of them has been a 2 star. So again, it's also been a really good quality month for me. Let's go ahead and talk about what I've read so far in August. So the very first thing I read in August was The Disasters by M.K. England. So this is a young adult sci-fi novel that I listened to the audiobook for, about this boy named Nax who's been trying to go to this academy for like spaceship pilots and things like that, and within the first couple days he washes out and gets expelled. So the book starts right as he's getting on a shuttle with a couple of other people who've washed out of the program as they are taking them back to Earth. And while they're on that shuttle, the academy gets completely blown up behind them, and they manage to escape and crash land on one of the colony worlds. So then they go to try to report what they know and what they heard about the attack, and they find out that they are actually the ones being framed for it. So the story ends up being this ragtag group of kids trying to get the truth out there about what happened, and I really enjoyed this one. I did give it 4 stars. I think this one had some flaws, definitely. I think the biggest flaws were in some of the world building and the plot. Like, there were points in the plot where even for a sci-fi I was like kind of suspending my disbelief, and there was like world building that was not very present, and when it was present, parts of it didn't make sense. But I'm gonna be real with you. I loved the characters in this so much that I did not care. Nax, specifically our main character, is good at what he does. He is cocky, he is a flirt, and that is one of my favorite perspectives to read from. So I loved him, and I loved almost every single person that was on this group of people. Some of them were more developed than others, but I did really like these characters and their interactions. So this definitely has a lot of like the found family trope in it, which found family in space we know I am a sucker for. So overall, I really did enjoy this one. I do think if you're somebody who is a lot more plot focused than character focused, you might have a couple of problems with this one, because again, the plot was a little bit weak at times. But my love for some of these characters just completely overwhelms that, so I went ahead and gave this a 4 star. The next book I read was I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. So this is a young adult contemporary mystery kind of a book about this 19-year-old cab driver named Ed who completely hates his life, basically. He feels like he's wasting his potential. He has this group of friends that he plays cards with and has a terrible relationship with his mom and has his weird smelly dog. And the book starts off with him and some of his friends at the bank, and then a bank robbery starts to happen, and he kind of chases down the bank robber at the end and is lauded as a hero for it. And then after that, he starts getting these playing cards in the mail with like lists of names and things on them. And he basically feels like he has this calling to go and help these people that the cards indicate, like giving his life purpose. I gave this book 2 stars. I really just did not like it at times. I see what it was trying to do, and I think for a young adult audience, it would have done this a little bit better. And I don't mean that even that this book was written too young, but I mean like some of the themes were really like they banged you over the head with them. And I think it could have been done a lot more subtly, but also if you're writing for a young adult audience, I understand why you might want to be more explicit. The thing that drove me crazy was I hated our main character, and it's one thing to have unlikable characters, but I think to some extent you are supposed to empathize with him and like him. And that was really frustrating for me, not to mention that every single female character in this is written atrociously. They all need to be saved by our main character. They all love our main character. Like, it's just, it really bothered me. He read as like the ultimate nice guy, and it just really bugged me. Also, the ending really bothered me. There was kind of a plot twist kind of a thing that happened right at the end. And I see why they did it, and I don't even hate it, but then there was this final chapter tacked on that was like, hey, did you get it? Did you see what I did here? Not to mention, like, there was a couple other things that happened in that chapter that just really shouldn't have happened and really bothered me. And this book was like kind of entertaining because I wanted to figure out this mystery, but like, which is why I'm not giving it a 1 star, but like I was actively upset about a lot of it. Like, this one just was not it for me, so 2 stars for sure. The next book I read was Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb, And I also read The Golden Fool by Robin Hobb a little bit later in the month, so I'm gonna kind of talk about these together. So Fool's Errand is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the third series in Robin Hobb's Greater Realm. So Fool's Errand and Golden Fool are the first and second books respectively in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the third trilogy in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings. The first trilogy in that is the Farseer trilogy, so I'm just going to give you like the intro to that, since if I described this one it would obviously have some spoilers in it. The first one is about a boy named Fitz, who is the bastard son of the king-in-waiting Prince Chivalry, and Fitz is kind of dropped off by his maternal grandfather at the palace steps, and Chivalry abdicates the throne in shame. So Fitz is then raised by the stable master, and the king, at the time King Shrewd, decides that he is valuable enough and has enough ties to court politics that he could be an asset to them, so they decide to raise him up to be the royal assassin. And so that first trilogy follows Fitz from like age 5 or 6 or whenever we meet him all the way up through like his entire teenage life. So this series starts with Fitz in his early 30s, I believe, where he's getting kind of roped back into some of it, and that's all I'm gonna say as far as that goes. I gave both of these 5 stars. They were so good. This one I took a while to read. I read the first little chunk of it a couple months ago, and then I ended up putting this down for some reason. Not because I was bored, but I just had other things going on, I guess. And so I didn't finish it until this month. This had a little bit of a slow start. Like, it was a lot of filling in what had happened over that gap and reminding you of kind of where we'd been, and it had kind of this slow start to it. But once we got back in Buckkeep with a lot of the characters that we knew from the previous series, I was in it. Like, I was so excited about this. We got some really interesting explorations into some of the magic systems, particularly the wit. In this series is very heavily focused, it seems like, on the wit, as opposed to the Farseer trilogy, which seemed to be a lot more focused on the skill, which are the two main magic systems of the Realm of the Elderlings, as far as these characters know. I have my doubts, but that's not the point. The character development we got in this was amazing, particularly of the Fool and Fitz himself. Seeing how he has grown and changed so much since we first saw him was really interesting. And the new characters that we were introduced to I liked a lot, especially how they interact with Fitz and how they change the way he kind of views a lot of things. It's hard to be this vague when it's like book 6. And then there was a part in this that made me cry a lot. And if you've read this book, you know what it is. Robin Hobb likes to take her characters and just take their emotions and shove them in a meat grinder and really just put them through it. And this one was no exception. This is probably the hardest any of them have hit me so far. It was horribly sad, but it was also very well done. I didn't want the thing to happen, but the way that the thing happened, I feel like was done correctly. Like, I wouldn't have wanted that done any other way. And then I read The Golden Fool, which is the second book, so this one picks up literally like exactly where this one leaves off. This one I gave 5 stars. This book didn't do much, and I don't mean that in like a negative way. I gave this 5 stars. I loved this. This is probably one of my favorites in the Realm of the Elderlings so far. But as far as plot goes, we didn't advance as far as I kind of thought we would. We did a lot of wrapping up from the events of Fool's Errand and then setting up for the events of Fool's Fate. But like, this one itself didn't have that much forward momentum as far as the plots, but I didn't mind it because with that setup came a ton of character growth and a ton of like reestablishing and establishing relationships with people and changing relationship dynamics, and it was so good. And this one also made me cry, and it wasn't even that something that sad happened. It was just like a really beautiful moment, and her writing is incredible, and it made me cry. Robin Hobb is a master at writing emotion and characters, and it was just so good. It was 600 pages of world building, lore, and character development. And I was here for it 100% of the time. I could not put this book down. I loved it. And my urge to actually go through and just read Fool's Fate right after this was so high. I almost just binged this trilogy, which I haven't done in a very long time. There is still a chance I will read Fool's Fate before the end of this month. If I don't, I'm gonna try to read the beginning of next month because I have to know what's gonna happen. I'm emotional. Some characters say that some things are going to happen, and if they do, I'm going to be a wreck. Yay! The next book I read was Rat Queens Volume 2. So this is the second volume in the Rat Queens graphic novel series about this group of girls who are an adventuring party, and they are your stereotypical like violent, loudmouth, boozy adventuring party, and I Gave the first one 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. This one I gave 4 stars. So this does pick up after the events of the first one, but this one, the plot was a lot more disjointed for me. The actual plot of what was going on, I felt like wasn't as smoothly done as the first time. And this one was a lot of getting the backstory about a couple of different members of the Rat Queens, which I did like. I felt like it could have been integrated a lot more smoothly. And there were a couple of moments in here that I really, really loved, but overall as a whole, it didn't have quite the same charm and draw as Volume 1 did, but I still really enjoyed it and I'm still really looking forward to getting to the rest of the series. I'm trying to find a single panel that I can show you guys that isn't just like horribly graphic. And I'm not getting there. There's one. That one's pretty good. That's horrifying. This series is really graphic, like violent, sexual, icky at times. Like it is very graphic. Do be aware of that before going into this. But I am having a good time with this series. I'll probably read another volume before the end of the month. The next thing I read was Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, and this is the 4th book, right? Yeah. And this is the 4th book in the Murderbot Diaries, which is a series of novellas about a security bot that has broken its governor module and calls itself Murderbot because of some tragic events in its past. And Murderbot is a socially anxious mess of a bot that would prefer to hide in cargo bays and watch TV dramas rather than actually interact with humans. But we've been following Murderbot's story for a while now, and this next volume gives us some, maybe not closure, but starts connecting some plot threads that we've been seeing throughout the series. This is probably my least favorite one since the first one. To be honest with you, I think I'm giving this 3.5 stars. I really liked 2 and 3 more than I liked this one. I felt like 2 and 3 did a deeper exploration of themes about AI, which I really enjoy, than this one did. This one felt a lot more just like about the actual plot as opposed to like having thematic elements to it. Like I can see where we're going with some of it, but it just wasn't as impactful to me as some of the other ones have been. That being said, I did still really enjoy this. I am giving it 3.5 stars, but this is not my favorite one that I've been to. I think the next one is a full-length novel. Again, this kind of wrapped up some of the plot threads in some of the previous novellas and I think is setting up for the full-length novel. I'm interested to see how Murderbot does in a longer format because these are so short and so digestible and usually like punching you with some kind of a theme. It'll be interesting to see how that works in a longer book, and I've seen kind of some mixed opinions on that. So one thing I did really like about this one was because it was wrapping up some of it, we encountered some characters that we'd seen before, and it was really interesting to see the character development that Murderbot has gone through and look at how different they are from when they first encountered these people to now. I did think that was really well done. Overall, I just really enjoy this series and I would highly recommend it. The next thing I read was Descender Volume 1 by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. This is a sci-fi graphic novel series about this world in which these huge robot creatures come and harvest a lot of organic life. Is that what it's harvesting? Harvesters? Is it harvesters? Reapers? Is this Mass Effect? I'm confused. These giant robots called the Harvesters have come out and tried to wipe out galactic life, and this follows a small android that's like meant to be a child companion bot named Tim, who wakes up kind of 10 years after this has happened. It turns out that lots of different groups of people are looking for him because he might hold some code that might be key in actually defeating the Harvesters. So this follows like some scientists that are looking for Tim as well as Tim himself. I really like this and I've been bouncing back and forth on a rating for a while, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and give it 4 stars because if it's not like overwhelmingly a 5-star, then I'm just gonna give it 4. But I can tell this is gonna be a really, really cool sci-fi story, and where we left off was very interesting. There have been some really cool moments so far, and there was some really cool character development done towards the end of this one about one of the scientist characters, and I was really into that. I'm really excited to learn more about what's going on. That is one thing I feel like I have problems with a lot of graphic novel series, is that I feel like the world building either feels so info dumpy or I don't know what's going on, and there's not usually a great in between. This one did pretty well, but I feel like there's still a lot of missing pieces. And so that like always brings down my rating on graphic novels a little bit, especially at the first couple volumes, because it takes a while for me to learn what exactly we're working with, and by the time it's established, I'm usually okay. The other thing is this one has a really interesting art style. It's almost this watercolor type of art, like here. Like, it's very different from a lot of other graphic novels I've read. And there are a couple of really, really badass panels. Like, this one's so cool. So the art of this was really, really interesting. A lot of times when I read graphic novels, I can appreciate the art, but I don't find myself noticing it when I read it. This one I did because it was such an interesting art style. Total, I think there are 5 volumes in Descender, and then I think there is a sequel kind of series called Ascender, and I am going to collect all of these because they're beautiful and I really, really love sci-fi graphic novels. Example A. Next, I read Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which is a YA sci-fi series that are basically fairy tale retellings to an extent. The first one, being Cinder, is a retelling of Cinderella. The second one, Scarlet, is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, and this one, Cress, is a retelling of Rapunzel. And this was my favorite one out of all of them so far. Like, this is gonna get a 4 to 4.5 stars from me, for sure. This is by far the best one. I think objectively, but also subjectively, I have to be honest, that character that was introduced in Scarlet that I loved so much, Thorn, this had some heavy focus on him, and I love him, so it might be coloring my rating slightly. But I also think aside from that, this one was just the most well done. It was the longest one so far, and I felt like it really gave us time to do a lot of exploration. I didn't give you the overall on what the series is about, and because it's hard to do, but anyway. The very first book is, again, a Cinderella retelling that follows our main character, Cinder. It's a cyborg, and it proceeds more or less how Cinderella does, but this story overall is a kind of a political story, political adventure type story about the relationship between Earth as a whole and Luna. So Luna is ruled by this woman named Queen Lavanna, who is kind of a tyrant, and all of the Lunars have these abilities that are kind of like, almost like fairies and a lot of other things. Like, they can have this glamour and they have this mind magic that can affect other people. And it's mostly about the really tense political situation between Luna and Earth and how all of these characters end up fitting into that. That was vague. So I mentioned in my review for Scarlet that at the end things are kind of have come together between the 2 books, and I really wanted to see where we left off. Like, we left off on the part I was really interested in, so we picked up in that spot, and everything is a lot more cohesive in this book. It feels a lot less like there's disparate plot threads like I felt especially in the second one, but kind of in the first 2. This one felt a lot more like one cohesive story, and the development of certain characters, especially Cinder herself, I really, really enjoyed. I felt like the goal of this one, the plot of this one, was a lot more interesting than some of the other ones. I feel like this is the first one that didn't end too early to me. I said this about the first 2, but they got to the part I cared about and then just stopped. This one got to the interesting moment, the part that I cared about, and actually saw it through, which I think helped my enjoyment of it a lot. So we're very clearly set up for a final book in this series with Winter, which I'll probably read next month. There is a very clear direction that we are going, and I feel like we are set up with the appropriate amount of time to do it. I'm very excited to see how the series concludes because I do really like, I was gonna say a lot of the characters, but I'm gonna be real, I really like about half of the characters. But that's enough. Like, my love for Thorn will compensate the fact that I don't care about half the other people. If you've read the first book and then not continued, I'm gonna be honest, this series does get better as it goes. So if you think there's anything in it that like is kind of pushing you towards it, I do think you should see it through. These books are so fast paced and I've been listening to them on audiobooks, so I get through them very quickly, even though they're not short audiobooks, especially this most recent one. But if you can get your hands on the audiobook, I would recommend them. And the final book I read this month, which I just finished yesterday, actually is Space Opera by Catherine M. Valenti, and it's so shiny. There we go. This is an absurdist sci-fi first contact kind of a novel in which humanity is visited by aliens who inform them that they have to participate in something called the Intergalactic Grand Prix, because apparently there have been wars fought over who is considered sentient or not, and ultimately what the galactic community has decided is it has to do with your ability to produce art. So they've decided to have an intergalactic battle of the bands. You have to place anywhere but dead last in this competition. If you do place dead last, you will be cleansed from your planet and your ecosystem will be restarted. So this book follows our main character, Decibel Jones, who was part of the band Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros. Originally it was a trio, but one of the main characters died, and this ends up being like a point of contention between the two band members and part of why they broke up. So this follows their journey to the event and then their time there, which is very interesting. Overall, I'm giving this 3 stars. This was a reread for me, and the first time I did give it 4 stars, but this time I think I'm just gonna give it a flat 3 because I'm a little bit more critical of it now than when I read it the first time. This, like I said, is absurdist sci-fi, and it tries very hard to be like Douglas Adams-esque, and I think it tries a little too hard. It feels a little bit overwritten to me. Some of the moments felt a little bit too much like nonsense and less like intentional absurdism, if that makes any sense. And one of the things I mentioned in my vlog for this was that I think this could have been a novella and I would have liked it more. There was that story that I already mentioned, and then there were like probably a third to half of this book was moments that are about the history of the galaxy and other races in the galaxy and previous competitions and things like that that had their moments, but those were especially where I felt like this book stretched itself too thin and went a little bit too hard. And I think without those, it would have been a lot tighter of a story and I would have enjoyed it more. That being said, the back of it says, life is beautiful and life is stupid. The like absurd sci-fi glam rock vibe of this was a really fun time. If that aesthetic is something that you think you would enjoy enough that it's gonna kind of distract you from some of the what I think are obvious detriments to this book, I would recommend picking this up. It was fun for that aspect of it. It's also not terribly long. It's just under 300 pages, so it's not a massive time investment. I definitely wouldn't say this is a wide recommendation because if you don't like the absurdist stuff, this is definitely not gonna do it for you. And if you do, you might have a little bit of a problem with the way it was executed, but if you're someone who thinks you will like that and thinks you will like the atmosphere, I do think it's worth a try. Okay, this plus Cress and I Am the Messenger is what I've read so far in August. We are halfway through it, and I have already read over 3,000 pages. What's happening to me? What am I doing? But I think that's all I've got for you guys today. If you want to keep up with what I'm reading, I have a link to my Goodreads down in the description below, but other than that, I'll see you guys next time.